Welcome to the JetLife podcast, pulling back the curtain on private aviation so you can live that jet life to the fullest. Whether you're looking to charter a jet or own a jet, my name's Tom Lelyo, and I'm your ultimate jet guide. Now on to the show. Hello and welcome everybody to the JetLife podcast. My name is Tom Lelyo, and today we're going to be talking about logbooks. We're going to be talking about logbooks and maintenance. I just got back from a preliminary visual inspection where I was traveling with a buyer to a plane that I had listed, and actually I did it twice. I did it once on Thursday and once yesterday, and what an experience with the logbooks, okay? And there are just a lot of lessons that were learned that I wanted to bring to you and share with you. So let's get started talking about logbooks, maintenance, and pretty much everything you're going to want to know when you're going into looking to buy your next jet and you want to review what's going on. So number one, let's talk about this idea of digital logbooks versus the actual logbook. So for a lot of aircraft, we're going to have the logbooks available digitally, and they're through different platforms, basically. And one of the platforms could be an Excel spreadsheet. It could be a platform like Sierra Tracks or JSSI maintenance tracking. It could be SESCOM. And it's very important to kind of keep in mind what you're getting when you're using the different platforms. Obviously, with an Excel spreadsheet, it's really up to the person who's doing it to be honest and to make sure that's tracked really, really well. Some shops also have their own proprietary system that they swear by, so you're going to want to be mindful of that. And the other thing is, when it comes to the subscriptions, there's different pricing points, and so some people will choose certain subscriptions just based on how much it's going to cost. The gold standard is your CAMP SESCOM maintenance tracking report, and the reason for that is whenever something needs to be put into the logbooks, the mechanic has to sign off on it and then send it to an analyst or send it to someone at Camp SESCOM, and they verify that it was done, and then it's the analyst at Camp that actually puts it into the Camp system. And so it's kind of a checks and balances thing where the mechanic says he did something, Camp confirms that he does something, and then it goes into the tracking software so that what you read is pretty accurate. Also, obviously a lot of the older jets, the 70s, 80s, and 90s, those maintenance report, those logs can be put into these different tracking systems, and the companies will charge you accordingly to upload all that stuff into the cloud. So you want to be mindful before you even head out. Ask for the digital logbooks. And they might be scanned in. So if it's a really older plane or a piston or something like that, they might be scanned logbooks so that you can go through them. It could be an Excel spreadsheet. It could be something like Sierra Tracks that's a step above a spreadsheet because you're able to filter things, you're able to find things, you're able to organize the reports, so that it's easy to read. So you might get a Sierra Tracks report from the owner that you can review, or it could be a camp report. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind. We've got the digital logbooks. Now let's talk about the organization of the logbooks. So you review the logbooks, makes sense to you. Digitally, remotely, now we have to actually show up at the jet and go through the manual logs. And there are a couple of things that you want to be mindful of when you're looking at these logs. Basically, they're going to be binders. They can be these leather-bound kind of smaller things, when it was earlier on. There could be, maybe just one or two binders. There could be four. It really kind of depends on how maintenance was tracked through the life of the aircraft. Obviously, how old it is going to make a difference. So you're going to find four kind of categories of information when you arrive. Number one, you're going to find manuals. Sometimes people keep all the manuals for the avionics and stuff like that. You're going to find flight logs, especially if it was on a 135 at some point. So these are literally just tracking each and every flight. And then you're going to get into the logbooks themselves. You're going to have one logbook for the airframe, and you're going to have one or two logbooks or three logbooks if we're looking at a Falcon for the engines. Each engine's going to have its own logbook. Now, there's a couple things you want to keep in mind. Number one, when it comes to the engine logbooks, it's not uncommon that engine has been on different airframes throughout its life. So you want to find the story of the engine. Maybe it started as a one version of the engine and got upgraded to, like, for example, a JT15D1 engine. Maybe it got upgraded to a -1A engine. Maybe it was a -1B, got converted to a -1A engine. So what's the story of that engine? Where did it start off at? And what you're really looking for in the engine logbooks are the last overhaul entry and the last hot section entry. That's going to, you just want to make sure that those maintenance items were done. So look for the last engine overhaul entry, the last hot section entry. That's also going to give you, usually those entries themselves will have a component list. Talk about life limited parts, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But it's going to give you kind of a overview of the health of the engine and things of that. Other things you can look for, if soap analysis were done to check and make sure that the engine's not burning any metal. You can find borescopes that might have been done that might have told you stuff. Replacement of blades, if a blade got chipped for some reason, that could, indicate maybe FOD. Maybe they sucked up a nut on the runway and it just chipped a blade. You can take a look at that. So basically that's kind of what you're looking for. And what you're going to notice as you're going through any of the logbooks is, some mechanics are using the Textron, form to fill out. Some are using like invoices of their own. So you're going to see, it's going to be an interesting story to kind of look through and see where this engine has been. The other thing you want to be mindful of, sometimes, depending on who did the maintenance, if you're looking for a specific entry like a hot section or overhaul entry and you can't find it in the engine logbooks, look in the airframe logbooks. And that can give you a little bit of the story as well. Sometimes they just put it in the airframe because that's how that mechanic organized stuff. You put everything in one logbook. The other thing you want to be mindful of are dates, hours, because if you have to find something, you might be able to do some detective work. Like, okay, there was a overhaul done at 3,500 hours, and we can't find the next overhaul at 7,000 hours. Well, you go looking through and you see in the airframe logbook, in the engine logbook, you see it had 7,100 hours in 1999. Okay, well, now that somewhere, earlier than 1999, there's got to be a logbook entry for that second overhaul. So you can go through the airframe logbooks, you can go through the engine logbooks, you can use the dates to kind of narrow down, use the dates and the total time to narrow down where you might find the log entry that you're looking for. So you're not just aimlessly looking through, and trying to find something. So that's the engine logbooks. The airframe logbooks are going to have your major inspections, your C checks, your phase 1 through 4 inspections, phase 5 inspections. So that's where you're going to find, all of that stuff is in the airframe logbook. And the other thing to notice is that the aircraft total time is probably going to differ from the engine times. So if the aircraft has 7,000 hours on it, the engine could have 10,000 hours on it. It could have 5,000 hours on it. A lot of the legacy jets have mix and match components, and so it's not uncommon that the airframe and the engine times don't match. It's also not uncommon for the engine times themselves, the right engine, the left engine, to not match either, because they might have been mixed and matched throughout the years. Also, fun little tip just so you're aware, the number 1 engine is the left engine. The number 2 engine is the right engine. So as you're looking through, sometimes they'll refer to it left engine, right engine. Sometimes it'll be 1 and 2. Obviously, you want to make sure you have the right serial numbers. That's kind of how the engines are kept. So make sure that when you're looking in the engine logbook, you're looking at the correct engine that you want to look for based on the serial number, not just based on position, because that engine could have been positioned different places. So, always looking at the top, kind of just scanning for, making sure you have the right serial number as well. So that's kind of the logbooks and like an overview of the organization of the logbooks. Let's talk about the story that the logbooks tell. So the story that the logbooks tell is one of maintenance, right? And the history of the aircraft and the maintenance that was done on it. And there's basically four maintenance categories or there's 4 levels of maintenance that you want to be aware of. You've got your service centers, you've got your authorized service centers, your well-known mechanics, and then Bob's Garage that you just found on Craigslist or in a Facebook forum or something like that. And let's talk about the difference, because as you're going through, you're going to see like, okay, this thing has been service center maintained, everything's organized, everything is color coded, it's all Textron forms, and like, wow, these logbooks are really clean. Or it's a mess of papers like flying everywhere, there's handwritten notes, there's sticky notes, and you're just like, what is going on? So with the service centers, you're looking at a replace versus a repair mentality. So the service centers are going to look at things and they're going to really try to replace items as opposed to repair them. I mean, it depends on the plane is what I'm saying. You know, if it's a legacy jet from the 70s, 80s, 90s, they're just going to, you know, just buy new parts and your plane will be better. Versus, you know, maybe someone who's more like a mechanic on the field, he might have different ways that he can go about fixing whatever the problem is that you're facing right now. So you got your service centers, that's the manufacturers basically, your Textrons, your Embraers, etc. Then you have authorized service centers. So you would have someone maybe like a Duncan or a Clay Lacy. These are third-party vendors, mechanics, that have a formal agreement and relationship with the manufacturers. So with the manufacturer service centers, you know, maybe there's only 3 or 4 of them in the country. Well, now to expand their reach, they've worked with and they've partnered with authorized service centers. So there might be one closer to you that's an authorized service center to work on Phenoms, you know, the Embraer Phenoms, or the Citations, you know, because they're a Textron service center. So they're more available. They're still going to, you know, obviously they're held to the standards of the maintenance of the manufacturers, so they're still going to be similar to a replace versus a repair mentality. It's probably going to cost you, you know, more money to get your work done there, but you get what you pay for. Not only do you get a level of work, a quality of workmanship that is, you know, to manufacturer standards, you're also getting what we talked about in the podcast earlier with Tim Wade. We talked about safety. You're also getting a system to organize and make sure that the maintenance is done well. There's checks and balances. There's people who focus on making sure the log entries are recorded correctly and they're organized specifically so that they're easy to find. So you're getting a whole team of people that are not just doing the right maintenance, but as it refers to the logbooks, they're making sure that the maintenance is recorded appropriately. And that can be, you know, really important to you, and that shows value. That shows value in the aircraft that you're going to want when you're going to buy an aircraft. You're going to want to see it's maintained, you know, as well as possible. So you got your service centers, you got your authorized service centers, then you've got your well-known mechanics. Maybe there's someone on the field, you're fortunate enough there's a well-known mechanic, he takes care of everybody's citations, there's a bunch of citations on the field, you know, we go to him. It could be a national or a regionally known guy that's just like, okay, he's, you know, I've got a couple guys in Texas that, you know, he's the Embraer guy. I've got guys in Florida, they're the citation guys. So if I see someone in pockets, you know, I can point them in the right direction if they're looking for a mechanic that maybe is not a service center or an authorized service center, but he's really, really well known for working on a specific type of aircraft. So that's kind of a happy medium. And then you've got, you know, Bob's Garage, which that has a wide range as well. That has someone, you know, maybe it's someone on the field that you just kind of found and you're just kind of trusting them. He's like, yeah, I've worked on citations before and I have the maintenance manual. He should be able to do the work. It's just a matter of, you get what you pay for. You can, you know, see, just go to a shop. How clean is it? You know, how many guys does he have working? Is he really busy? Is he not really busy? Is he, you know, going to just throw duct tape on something and it's not going to be done even though your plane's going to fly? So, you know, it's kind of like that. So what I was going to say is, you know, all mechanics, this is important, all mechanics have to be trained. And every entry that is in the logbooks is going to be signed off on. And so what happens is every time you turn a wrench, every time you turn a screw, every time you do something with the aircraft, the mechanic has to write down what he or she did. And then next to it, they sign their license number. And what that does is it holds them accountable, because if something goes wrong and the insurance is checking the logbooks and they look at it and they say, oh, Jim, you signed next to it that you did a phase 1 through 4 inspection. Well, the landing gear collapsed on landing because of corrosion, and that should have been seen in the 1 through 4 that you did last month. What's the story? So it's very important when someone signs off on it that they're not just pencil whipping it, because if something happens, then It's going to go back to that individual and their license number. So I want you to understand that, because even if you're going to Bob's Garage, because it's budget, you know him, you like him, you trust him, there's still a standard that he has to do. There's a maintenance manual that says this is how you do this item, right? And then Bob has to say, okay, I did this item, and here's my license number to prove that I'm capable and I did it. And then if something goes wrong, it comes back to him. So there are still checks and balances even at the local level. You don't have to go to a service center just to have all the checks and balances. And depending on how you want to maintain your aircraft, that's up to you. But I wanted to give you those levels of maintenance as they relate to the logbooks, because that's the story that the logbooks are going to tell. The logbooks are going to tell us, well, where was this plane maintained, throughout its life. Let's talk about maintenance programs, because when you're looking at the logbooks, it's going to tell you if it's on a maintenance program. You've got two types of maintenance program. You've got your airframe maintenance program, and you've got your engine maintenance programs. And the airframe is going to take care of most of your inspections. If parts need to be replaced, it could potentially take care of that. And you're paying hourly, basically a couple $100 an hour for however much it flies, so that you're paying into that insurance policy. So when something has to get fixed or replaced or repaired, the maintenance program will take care of it. Now, you want to watch on all these programs, whether it's an airframe or an engine program, what does it actually cover? The engine programs usually will cover the overhaul and the hot section inspections, the big inspections on the engines. And so you want a couple things to watch out for would be, for the engine programs, does it cover FOD, foreign object debris, or foreign object damage? Does it cover, if a nut or a bolt gets sucked into the engine, if there's a bird strike, does it cover that kind of stuff? FOD is not always covered. It may be covered by your insurance, so you can go look at that and find out. But FOD and corrosion, is corrosion covered by your engine program? And they may have different tiers. So, for example, the Williams engines have the TAP Elite program, does not cover FOD, does not cover corrosion, but they have a TAP Blue program that will cover FOD and corrosion. So maybe as you're going through the logbooks, you notice it's on one program, and you notice that program doesn't cover what you need, so you switch it to another program. You upgrade it. Or maybe it's more than you want. So, for example, for the airframe programs, some of them cover life-limited parts. Those are parts within the airframe and within the engine that after a certain amount of hours you have to replace them. Some programs don't cover that, so you're going to pay for that. Some programs don't cover certain shops, so they might say you have to take it here. Or if you pay us a little bit more, you can take it anywhere you want. Some don't cover shipping a part, out. You got to pay for that shipping and for it to come back. So as you're going through the logbooks, you want to look at the programs that are involved. You want to make sure, it covers everything you want it to cover. You want to make sure that it's also paid up. I've been in situations where, someone was buying an aircraft and it was on a TAP Blue program and they were all ready to go, and then they find out when they call Williams, oh yeah, by the way, there's a $300,000 balance that has to be paid before this can be transferred. And it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know. So as you're going through the logbooks, finding out the story of the programs, is there a balance that has to be left? Maybe there is, and maybe you can defer it to the next major item. That's common, where there's a balance, but don't worry, you don't have to pay us until we do an overhaul. Okay, but that still changes the deal, right? Because you weren't expecting to pay an extra $300,000 at the overhaul. You were expecting just to keep paying your hourly, and that would be it. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind as you're going through the logbooks, finding out the story, and understanding programs and airframe. Let's talk about logbooks and math. You're going to want to bring your calculator when it comes to the logbooks, because you're going to be calculating a lot of things. Now, the main point I want to bring out when it comes to logbooks and math is some components have a grace period. So, for example, a phase 1 through 4 inspection has like a 30-day grace period. So it's due at the end of the month, and if you don't get to it at the end of the month, but you're going to get to the next month, like there's a grace period. There's a grace period when it comes to the engines. You have to hot section them every 1,750 hours for a JT15D-1A and through those engines are 3,500-hour TBO engines. There's a 50-hour grace period, so you can wait an extra 50 hours, and some people push it that 50 hours. There's also, I think with the Williams engine, there's also timing that you can do it early, but you have to be within a certain limit. I think within 200 hours, you can do a hot section or an overhaul early if you wanted to. So there's that as well. So bring your calculators. There's a lot of math that you're going to want to do. Beyond the big inspections, the big engine stuff you're going to want to be aware of, the other thing you want to be aware of are life-limited parts. When it comes to going through the logbooks, a lot of people focus on the overhaul and the engines. You want to look at life-limited parts. So common life-limited parts in the engine are the fan hub, the impeller, compressor rotors, the HT disc, the LT disc, the blades. The blades are usually one of the bigger ones that people will find. They usually make it from about 3,500 hour overhaul TBOs, but what's going to happen is, especially in the later ones, is the blades might cost maybe a couple $100, $300 per blade. So there's 71 blades, so you're looking, okay, well, 300 times 71, that's 21 grand for the blades. That's just the parts. But because you have to take the whole thing off, the whole engine off, you have to get it serviced. Like that could be an extra, 20, 30, 40 grand of labor. So replacing all the blades can easily get close to six figures, when that's due. So you want to be aware of that while you're going through the logbooks to say, okay, well, when are the life-limited parts due? Because maybe I can do a hot section now instead of an overhaul, but then I still have to replace a bunch of stuff. Is it worth it, or do I just do an overhaul and replace all the parts? So life-limited parts are going to be something that's important for you to keep in mind when you're looking through the logbooks. When are they coming due? Rounding it out, we've got STCs, that are going to be part of the logbook. So if your aircraft was modified and it was let's say a Cessna 500 and converted to a 501, you're going to want to find that STC. Let's say they did something, and an STC is a supplemental type certificate. So anytime you make changes to the inside or to the aircraft at all, you add winglets, you change the engines, you add a compartment under the tail, an aft baggage mod, you finish that. You move chairs around. You add a bench where there was a barrel seat. All that kind of stuff requires what's called a STC, a supplemental type certificate, and that changes the nature, if you will, of the jet. And so you want to make sure you have all the STCs that you're going to need. They're usually found in a form called the 8130s. It could be organized in the logbooks if you're lucky, or if not, they just stuck it in there whenever it was done, and you got to go find it. So they usually look kind of fancy, almost like a diploma, and they have nice fancy font on there, and they usually kind of make a big deal about it. But you could have STCs for adding air conditioning, anything. So you want to make sure if there's specific things that you want on the jet that you have all those STCs. It may be possible to find them later, but just something you want to be mindful of. The other thing you can look at is what's called extension programs, or they're called AAIPs. I think it's Alternative Aircraft Inspection Programs or something along those lines. AAIPs is what the acronym is. And basically those are programs that help you change the maintenance calendar on your jet. So if you're a low utilization user using your jet less than 200 hours a year, it's going to be something where you only have to do half of a 1 through 4 inspection every 2 years. So it's going to take you a total of 4 years to do a full phase 1 through 4 inspection. And that helps you with downtime. It helps you with cost of maintenance. A phase 5 inspection is supposed to be every 3 years. So in 3 years, you do half the phase 5. And then in another 3 years, you do another half of the phase 5, the phase 5A and B. Again, it elongates the inspections. And basically what it was is somebody, came up and said, hey, listen, I'm only flying 200 hours a year, so I don't need to inspect everything as often, as someone who's using it a lot more. When the maintenance manual was originally intended, it was for more use. So I'm going to write up, maintenance items that someone can do to split these phases up. And they submitted it to the FAA, and they said, hey, listen, look at these inspections that I'm recommending for someone to do so that they don't have to do their inspections as often. Will you approve this? They said yes. So they gave them a manual and basically a patent to that inspection program. So you pay the program, the AAIP, you pay them, let's say it's $25,000, $28,000. You get access to the program and a maintenance manual so that your mechanic can now do maintenance on this low utilization schedule. So the popular ones are the Bacon program for the Cessnas, the Citations, and the LUMP program, the low utilization maintenance program by Textron. So there's a couple of different options you can have there, but you're going to want to find that in the logs and find out even more importantly in some cases, if it's on the program and you don't want it to be on the program, usually it's going to require reverting back to the calendar. So you may have to do a full 1 through 5 inspection. So you're going to look in the logbook, say, when was the last full 1 through 5 inspection? And if it was, let's say, 6 years ago, well, as soon as you buy that aircraft and you take it off that AAIP, that aircraft is now out of inspection. It's going to require a 1 through 5. And if your guys are going to do that, you might need a ferry permit to get it back to where the base is, and then you can proceed with your 1 through 5. So there's a lot. I hope this information is helpful, and I think one of the big takeaways is going through, and I'm just, by the way, I should have said this at the beginning, I'm just a broker. I'm not a maintenance guy. I'm not a mechanic. This is just stuff I've learned, over the years, and I want you to just kind of pull back this curtain so that you can look at this and see, like, this is kind of a big deal. Your logbook review is not just, okay, like I just trust whatever happened. Like, every plane has a story. And you want to get as complete a picture of that story as possible. And so, yes, you can show up and do a pre-buy, and you can personally look through and see all this stuff. And it's kind of cool. It's kind of interesting, especially if you're into that kind of stuff. But hiring a professional to do an audit of the logbooks is extremely important, in my opinion, when you're buying, a jet, an asset of this magnitude. So there are companies that specialize in logbook reviews. They're usually maintenance companies that specialize in pre-buys. Or if you have a mechanic already or a pilot already, you can send them over, and have them look at it and kind of give you a sense. So you can do 2 levels of logbook reviews. You can do a preliminary visual where someone goes and looks at the plane. It could be you, it could be a representative, and they just scan through the logbooks. Yes, here's the brief overview. Yes, we have the engine overhaul information. Yes, we have the hot section entry. Yes, we know that the times are verified on the data plate for the life limited parts. Yes, we have the airframe maintenance items. We know when the last 1 through 5 inspection was done. Okay, and the times all seem to match up with everything. I mean, those are kind of the basics that a pilot, anyone that you send over for a preliminary visual inspection can do that. But then you want to know even more about it, because as you dig into it, I've had it where, I've had a couple of years ago, I had a plane, we were digging through it, and we found out it never had an overhaul. Now, it only had 3,900 hours on it or something like that. 3,700 hours on it. And so it was, and that's not that that's illegal. It's not. You're just running it past TBO. It had a hot section at an appropriate time. So it was still fine, but it just never had the overhaul. That's just how the owner was using it. And so when we found that out, it's just kind of like, okay, now we need to, is this what are we going to do about this? Is the buyer going to be okay with that? Is the seller going to change the price at all? How's that going to work? Again, the purpose of the logbook review and any preliminary is to just know what you're getting yourself into. Every jet is going to have something, quote unquote, wrong with it. Every jet is going to have something that's popping up that's a kind of a surprise. So don't go into this thinking, oh, I don't know what is going to, what's going to be. Go into this thinking, I'm going to find out what I'm getting into. And you can get a little picture of that yourself, but it's really, really, complex. It can be really complex, especially if there was like any import or export stuff too. Now you're going through logbooks in a different language. That's always fun. So hire someone. I've got some recommendations of people that I have worked with in the past and be happy to pass that along. I hope this was helpful for you. For more information, if you're a buyer, go to theultimatejetguide.com/buy. Download our Ultimate Jet Guide there. And, any questions, you can hit me up on Instagram, on TikTok, on LinkedIn. We're at all of them, and I greatly, appreciate you guys checking out, what we're doing here at the Ultimate Jet Life, and we'll catch you guys later. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to check out theultimatejetguide.com.